Hello and welcome to this video. My name is Mauri. In this one we will examine what check means and what to do about it. So let's get started. The king is attacked. To attack a piece does not mean the same as to take or capture that piece. It means to threaten the piece. What is it called when a chess piece attacks or threatens the king? Check. Check is a warning that the king is attacked and that you must react. You can never leave your king in check, nor can you move it to a square that is attacked by an enemy piece. What do we always have to do when we're in check? Hint, it's 4 words and begins with the letter G. Get out of check. What are the 3 ways of getting out of check? Take, block, move. Let's see how this all works on a chessboard. So in our first example, the white king on f5 is in check from the rook on b5. White's best move is to take the rook that's checking with the bishop, so like this. White had another option. He could have moved the king out of the check like this, for example, but that would have been a mistake because now black still could win the game with his rook and king, but take the rook that's checking, and now black can't win anymore with just the king. Example number 2, block. The white king on e4 is in check from the rook on a4. Block means put something between your king and the rook and the piece that is checking you. In this case, the rook. What can white put between his king and the rook that's checking? The answer is he can put his rook here on d4. So now this check has been blocked. White's not in check anymore. And on a side note, if black takes this rook, we can just take that rook, and then the game ends in a draw. But this is blocking, putting something between your king and the piece that's checking you. And the third example is to move the king out of the check. So in this position here, this rook is checking that king, and he can move the king to any of these squares here, but he cannot go to this one or this one, and he cannot stay on this one because the rook is attacking all those squares marked in red, but he isn't attacking any of those squares marked in green. So this would be an example of how to move the king out of check. Alright, and now exercise number 1, where you have to figure out what is the best option. So always think take, block, move. Sometimes you will have all 3 options, sometimes only 2, sometimes maybe just one of those options, and sometimes even none of them. We'll get to that later. But here we can take or move. Which one is the correct choice here? So let's look at first take. So to take would be a big mistake actually. We will now lose our queen because that rook was protected by the pawn. See the pawn here? That pawn took our queen. So don't give your queen for a rook. And also now this pawn will become a queen itself. So like this, we can try to come closer, try to get the pawn, but we won't be able to. We can't take this pawn now because it's protected by the black king. So this is not possible. If we come here, the pawn promotes, becomes a queen, and the queen is protected by this king on a2, and black wins. So in this case, taking was a big mistake and moving was the correct choice. White is actually then still winning with best play. Exercise 2. White is in check from this queen on c6. Should he take the queen or move the king? So who can take this queen? So let's look at our options. If we move the king out of the check, that's actually a big mistake, because now what's going to happen is that black takes our bishop and black is in a winning position. If we take the queen like this, we lose our bishop, but don't worry, first of all, we got a queen for our bishop, which is a really good trade for white. Secondly, we can now also get this pawn like this. The black king is too far away and we can take the pawn. And that gives us a draw in this game. When there are just kings left on the board, the game immediately ends in a draw. That's when nobody wins and nobody loses. So that's why taking was correct here. If you move the king, you get a losing position. If you take the queen, you draw the game. Alright, white in check. There's a bishop on c6 checking this king here. Should white block or move? So let's have a look at the options. If we block the check, now we're going to lose a queen for a bishop, so that's a really bad trade for white. Take, and the game is a draw. If we move the king, we're still winning, so that's why moving was definitely the correct choice here. Alright, and then this one, white is in check. Here's the king on g2, and there's a black queen on a2 checking. Should white block or move? Let's have a look at the options. If we move the king out of the check, that's a mistake actually, because what will happen is that black will now take our strongest piece that we have had left, which was the rook, and black's now in a winning position. Now for white, obviously we don't want that, so let's explore other options. Did you notice that there are two ways of blocking this check? If we block the check like this, that's a block, but it's a mistake. The rook was still hanging, as we say, and gets taken and black is winning. So the only correct choice is rook to e2. So we're out of check because we blocked the check and we also saved the rook. Notice how the rook is protected by the bishop. Black doesn't want to take the rook because, well, then we just take the queen, and then white is the one who's actually winning. So black should do something else, because we're actually threatening the queen. The rook is attacking the queen, so the queen should actually run away somewhere, and then the game is even still. All right, and then finally a very short game where white goes e4, black plays d6, white goes bishop b5 check. Once a student thought he had won the game in this position. The king is in check and can't move. Was the student right in thinking he had won? The answer is certainly not. Even though the king can't move and the bishop can't be taken, black has no less than 5 ways of blocking that check. Can you see all of them? First, let's get a bad block out of the way. So if we block like this, we're going to lose the queen. So white takes, black can recapture, but black lost the queen, so white is winning here. There are actually 4 other ways of blocking, which are all much better. So knight c6 is one of them. This knight is protected, so if white takes, we can take, and the position is just equal. The knight can also go to d7 to block. Again, if white takes, we can just take either with the bishop or with the queen, and black is fine. The bishop can also block. If white takes the bishop, we just recapture either like this or like that. And don't take with the king. I don't want to get that king forward too early in the game. And then finally, my favorite block is to play c6. This actually attacks the bishop, so now the bishop will have to run away. So black gains a tempo, as we say. It means that white will not have to sort of waste a move on moving the bishop again. And also notice that he definitely doesn't want to take this pawn, because this pawn was protected by that pawn on b7 and the knight on c6. So then that would be really bad for white. Alright, so when you're in check, always think take, block, move. What is my best option here? If you have none of the options, you can't take, you can't block, you can't move, well, then it is actually checkmate, and then you have lost the game. But usually when you're in check, you will have one or more of those three options: take, block, or move. All right, so that's the end of this lesson. I thank you very much for watching and see you in the next video. Bye bye.